I'm poor. That's why they wouldn't let me in. The words came out of Maya's mouth like a sigh, barely a whisper, so soft they dissolved into the rustling of the leaves and the far-off honk of city traffic. No one heard them, but one man did. Or maybe he didn't hear the words exactly. Maybe it was the way her shoulders slumped, or the way her small hands clutched a newspaper-wrapped box to her chest. Maybe it was the way she sat, stiff and still on the far end of the park bench as if she was trying not to exist, but he couldn't ignore her. He watched her from a few feet away at first, leaning against a lamppost with a paper cup of black coffee warming his palm. He hadn't meant to stop. He just finished a meeting at a nearby nonprofit, was heading toward his car. But something about the girl's posture made him pause. Maya, he didn't know her name yet, but he saw it all. Her dress, clearly ironed with care, hung just a little too short at the hem. Her shoes, once white, were now a worn shade of gray. Her hair had been combed and tied with a purple ribbon, faded but neat, and her eyes, God, her eyes, that quiet heartbreak in them. A storm of sadness and confusion just barely held at bay. Eyes too old for a child her age. He remembered those eyes. He'd seen them before in the mirror when he was 9. He'd been the one on the bench once, not in a park, but on a cracked sidewalk in East Detroit, not with a gift box, but with a lunch bag of peanut butter sandwiches that had melted in the sun. And he remembered that very same thought clenching in his chest like a fist. I'm poor, that's why they don't want me. Maya didn't cry. Not really. But her eyes glistened as she stared at the ground, and her lower lip trembled as she hugged the box tighter. The man stepped away from the lamppost and approached quietly. He walked slowly, not to startle her, not to tower over her. He stopped a few feet away, cleared his throat softly, and asked, "Mind if I sit here?" Maya blinked, startled. Her fingers gripped the gift box a little tighter. She hesitated, then nodded slightly. He sat down, leaving space between them. They stayed quiet for a moment, just listening to the wind. Then he turned his head gently toward her. Rough day? She shrugged. Was it the party across the street? Maya glanced at him, unsure. Then she looked down again and nodded. I was invited, she said, voice from holding back tears. But the man at the door, he said, I wasn't on the list. Did you have an invitation? She pulled a crumpled card from her purse and handed it to him silently. He looked at it carefully, then nodded. Looks real to me, he said. Pretty handwriting. It's from my friend Madison, she whispered. We sit together in science class. She told me to come. She said it didn't matter that I couldn't bring something fancy. He looked at the gift in her lap. Is that for her? Maya nodded. It's a music box from the thrift store on Peachtree. It plays You Are My Sunshine. That's a good song, he said. My mother used to hum it while she ironed shirts. Maya's lip twitched. Mine, too. She works 2 jobs. Sometimes I don't see her till bedtime, but she always kisses me goodnight, even if I'm asleep. The man nodded, silent for a moment. Then he asked gently, What's your name? Maya. He smiled. Beautiful name. I'm Mark. She didn't smile, but her shoulders relaxed a little. She sniffled and wiped her sleeve across her cheek. They didn't even look at the invitation, she murmured. They looked at me, just me, and decided I didn't belong. If your heart ached for Maya, hit the like button to let her know she's not alone. And don't forget to drop a comment telling us where you're watching this from, BUP Stories. Who knows, someone nearby might be watching and feeling the same way you do. Mark took a slow breath. He'd heard boardroom executives say the same thing in different ways. Seen it happen in restaurants, in hiring rooms, in hotel lobbies. But seeing it here, on the face of a child with trembling lips and a handmade gift, this was different. This was personal. He turned fully toward her. Come on, he said quietly. Let's go back. She looked at him in disbelief. Back where? The party. They won't let me in. You saw. They didn't let you in, he said gently. But they haven't met me yet. Maya stared at him. Then after a long pause, she asked, "Are you somebody?" Mark chuckled. "I've been called worse." She gave a half smile. "You sound like my uncle." "I'll take that as a compliment." He stood, offering her his hand. She hesitated, then took it slowly, the box still clutched in her other arm. As they crossed the street, her step small beside his, Maya whispered so quietly he almost didn't hear. "You don't have to do this." "I know," he replied. "That's why I am." And together, they walked toward the same door that had slammed her out. In this time, someone was watching. The garden terrace loomed taller than before. Maya stood quietly beside Mark as they reached the top step once more. Her fingers clutched the gift box so tightly now. The newspaper was starting to tear at the corners. Her heart thudded in her chest like it wanted to turn around and run all the way back to her apartment on Glenview Avenue. Mark felt the tension in her steps. "Want to turn back?" he asked gently. Not as a challenge, but as a choice. Maya didn't answer right away. Then, after a breath, she whispered, "No, not this time." The doorman saw them coming. His eyebrows twitched when he recognized Maya. But he straightened up when he saw Mark. Something about the way Mark walked, calm, purposeful, like a man used to walking through important doors without knocking, put him on edge. "Good evening," Mark said simply, offering a half smile. "We're here for the Carter birthday party." The doorman looked at Maya, then back at Mark. "I'm afraid you're afraid you made a mistake earlier," Mark interrupted, not unkindly. "But that's all right. Mistakes can be corrected." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small leather case. Inside was a sleek, dark card with silver embossed letters. Mark S. Beckett, Managing Partner. Beckett Holdings. The doorman's posture stiffened. His jaw twitched. "Mr. Beckett, of course. I wasn't aware." "You weren't supposed to be," Mark replied. "I like seeing places as they truly are." He turned to Maya and gave a small nod. "Shall we?" The doorman stepped aside. Slowly, the heavy doors opened again, and this time, Maya crossed the threshold. It was like walking into a different world. The ceiling stretched high above, glittering with crystal chandeliers. Soft jazz floated in the air. Elegant waitstaff moved like dancers, balancing silver trays and crystal glasses. Laughter echoed from the far hall where children played under a banner that read, "Happy 11th, Madison." Maya froze. Her breath caught. She felt so small. The tulle dresses, the sparkling shoes, the parents with expensive coats and expensive watches and perfect smiles. "Just keep walking," Mark said beside her, low and steady. "You don't owe anyone here an explanation." They made their way down the hall toward the banquet room. People turned as they passed, some in curiosity, others in confusion. A woman in pearls leaned toward her friend and whispered something behind a manicured hand. Maya stared straight ahead, her back straight, her grip firm on the gift. Suddenly, a voice called out, "Maya." She looked up. Madison Carter, the birthday girl, was running across the room. Her golden curls bounced and her silver dress shimmered under the lights. She pushed past the cluster of girls gathered around the candy table and flung her arms around Maya. "I thought you weren't coming," Madison beamed. They said I wasn't on the list," Maya said, eyes wide. "What? That's crazy. I told my mom to put you on it." Madison turned toward the nearby crowd of adults, waving. "Mom, this is Maya, remember?" A tall woman with sleek hair and a silk scarf gave a vague nod and a tight smile. "Of course, sweetheart." "Hello, Maya." Mark watched it all unfold, arms crossed behind his back. Madison grabbed Maya's hand. "Come on, I saved you a cupcake." Maya looked up at Mark, unsure. He gave a small wink. "I'll be nearby. Go enjoy." And just like that, Maya disappeared into the party. Mark stepped to the side, found a quiet spot near the hors d'oeuvre table. A waiter offered him a drink, declined. Behind him, a few guests whispered, "Who's the man with her?" Isn't that Mark Beckett? I thought he didn't attend social events like this. He let the noise settle around him like dust, uninterested. Across the room, Maya stood in a circle of girls. One of them looked her up and down, eyes narrowing. "Where'd you get your dress?" she asked. Maya hesitated. "My mom found it for me." "Thrift store." A few girls blinked. One smiled faintly. "I like it," Madison said quickly. "It's vintage." Maya's shoulders relaxed. But Mark saw it. The way she shifted her feet, the way she avoided mirrors, the way she kept a hand over the gift like it might vanish. That thread of doubt still curling around her like smoke. Moments later, a man in a sharp suit approached Mark. "Mr. Beckett," he said carefully. "I didn't know you'd be here this evening." Mark turned, measured him. "You're Dalton, right? Manager here." "Yes, sir." "I apologize for the earlier confusion." "I assure you, had we known you didn't need to know me," Mark said, quiet but firm. "You only needed to know she was invited." Dalton swallowed hard. "Of course, it won't happen again." "I know," Mark said, "because it'll be your last opportunity to make that mistake." Dalton's face paled. Mark turned his gaze back to the dance floor. Maya was laughing now, spinning in circles with Madison. For a moment, all the shadows fell away, and for the first time in a long while, Mark felt something settle in his chest. A quiet kind of peace, a memory redeemed. He reached into his pocket and ran his thumb across the edge of an old photograph he always carried, a boy, maybe 9, in a hand-me-down sweater, sitting alone on a stoop with a paper bag lunch. He folded it carefully and tucked it away. Across the room, Maya opened her gift for Madison. The little music box began to play. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." The sound drifted through the party, and even the whisperers paused, and for the first time that evening, Maya smiled. Not the polite smile, but a full one. True, bright, unafraid. And Mark Beckett, billionaire, builder of buildings and companies and empires, knew one thing with certainty. This night, this tiny victory, meant more than all of it. Maya had never felt so many eyes on her. Even as she laughed with Madison and watched the small music box spin its tiny ballerina, she sensed the glances from across the room, curious, cautious, calculating. Some were simple stares of surprise. Others wrapped in layers of silent judgment. She tried not to look, not to notice, but in every reflective surface, the window panes, the polished silver trays, the smooth marble columns, she caught glimpses of her dress, her shoes, the paper-thin gift wrap clutched in Madison's hands. It was all so different, so out of place. Yet Madison, radiant and smiling, didn't seem to care. She twirled beside Maya, introduced her to cousins and friends with bubbly excitement, and insisted on Maya helping her blow out the candles. Still, Maya's smile flickered at the edges. She saw the mothers standing near the refreshment table, whispering beneath their pastel scarves. "Is she a relative? Doesn't look like one. No idea. Must be from school. She doesn't belong here." The words were never loud enough to be certain, but Maya didn't need certainty. She'd learned to read lips before she could read books. A small piece of her heart folded inwards. Across the room, Mark Beckett stood in quiet observation, a glass of water untouched in his hand. He watched Maya, watched the party, watched the quiet, rotting undercurrent he'd seen too many times before. And he waited. He didn't interrupt when Maya excused herself and wandered toward the hallway just beyond the party lights. He followed at a careful distance, like a shadow moving with purpose, not pressure. She stopped at a large window that overlooked the garden patio. The night air pressed gently against the glass. Her reflection stared back, dim, distant, different. Mark stepped up beside her. "You okay?" he asked softly. Maya didn't answer at first. Then she said, "I thought I'd feel happy buying here, buying seen." "You don't?" "I do and I don't." He nodded. "That's how it starts." She looked at him puzzled. "When you realize being let in isn't the same as being welcomed," he said. Maya let out a breath. "They look at me like I don't belong. And what do you think? I don't know anymore. Mark's gaze didn't leave the glass. You remember what you whispered on that bench? She hesitated. That I was poor. He nodded. That's what they saw. But what they missed was something greater. She tilted her head. You walked here with courage. You came with a gift that meant something. You walked in even after the door was shut once. He looked at her now. And that's not poverty. That's power. Maya blinked fast, trying to push back the tears gathering again. You really think that? I see it in you. Same way I once saw it in myself. She smiled faintly. You said that before, that you were like me. Mark chuckled. Not long ago, I was that kid outside just wanting a chance. The only difference between then and now is that I remember what it feels like. Maya looked out the window again. The patio lights cast a soft glow on the brick path outside. She watched a pair of waiters preparing another tray near the exit door. Then suddenly, she asked, Why did you come back with me? Mark turned his body slightly toward her. Because no one did that for me. They stood in silence a moment longer. Then Maya asked, Are you really someone important? He smiled. Some people think so, but not because of my money. She considered that. Then what? Because of what I do with it. Maya's eyes studied him. Are you going to tell anyone what happened at the door? Mark's expression hardened just slightly. They already know, and they'll feel it not in words but in changes. Just then the manager Dalton rounded the corner and spotted them. He hesitated a moment before approaching. Mr. Beckett, he said with forced cheer. We've corrected the oversight. Everything is running smoothly now. Mark didn't return the smile. Tell me something, Dalton, he said calmly. When you first saw her outside, what did you see? Dalton shifted uncomfortably. I wasn't informed of her status as a guest. That's not what I asked. Dalton swallowed. I saw a child without credentials. Try again. The silence pressed in. I saw someone who didn't match the expected image of our clientele. There it is, Mark said. You saw a child, and what you measured was her worth against your assumptions. Dalton said nothing. I won't make this public, Mark continued. But you're going to draft a new guest policy. And while you're at it, schedule training for your staff, because the next child who walks in here might not have me standing behind her. Dalton's face went pale. Yes, sir. Mark turned back to Maya and offered his arm. She took it gently. As they walked back toward the banquet hall, Mark leaned down and whispered, You ready to leave? Maya paused. Can I stay just a bit longer? Of course. They returned to the party side by side, walking like equals through a crowd, still trying to figure out who they were. And when they passed the same doorway that once turned her away, Maya looked up, not at the door this time, but beyond it. Somewhere deep inside her, something unlocked. Not because someone let her in, but because she walked back in on her own terms. Maya moved through the banquet hall with a different kind of silence now. Not the silence of shame, but one of watching, of measuring. She was still the same girl in the faded blue dress, still clutching memories tighter than anyone knew. But something inside her had shifted, quietly but unmistakably. She no longer flinched at the stares. Madison had taken her back into the circle of children and introduced her again, louder this time, as if daring the room to question it. This is Maya, she said proudly. She's my science partner, and she's smart. She helped me with the volcano project. The other kids nodded, some out of genuine respect, others simply following Madison's lead, but not all. A girl named Peyton, blonde, shark-shinned, already trained in the language of glances, tilted her head. Where'd you say you live again? She asked with a sugary tone. Maya stiffened. Midtown. Peyton's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Oh, that's far. It's not that far, Maya said. I take the 27 bus. A few girls exchanged glances. Madison looked annoyed. Peyton, she said with warning in her voice. Let's not be weird. Maya kept her chin up, though her fingers curled slightly at her sides. Her eyes flicked across the room just briefly and found Mark. He stood near the tall windows now, talking quietly with one of the chefs, but when their eyes met, he gave a subtle nod. She nodded back, barely visible, but it was enough. Across the room, the grown-ups continued their ritual of small talk, wine glasses, and whispered evaluations. One woman leaned toward another. She's here with him, isn't she? I heard he owns the property. No wonder she got in. That dress, though, it's humble. Mark caught the murmurs. Not the words, but the tone. He'd been navigating such spaces for years. His hands clasped behind his back, his posture calm, but beneath it simmered something steady and deep. Not anger, something more precise. A waiter passed with a tray of miniature cheesecakes. Mark waved him over and took one, though he didn't eat it. Instead, he watched Maya. She was now at the dessert table, choosing carefully. Madison stood beside her, talking about favorite toppings. A boy knocked into the table by accident, spilling a ladle of chocolate sauce. Some of it splashed onto Maya's sleeve. Oh, sorry, he gasped. Maya blinked at the mess. But before she could speak, a woman, tall, severe, in a coral-colored blazer rushed over. What happened here? She asked, her eyes immediately narrowing on Maya. There was an accident, Maya said quickly. It's all right, sweetheart. Let's get you cleaned up, the woman said to the boy. Then glancing down at Maya's arm, she added, that fabric might stain easily. Maya tried to smile. It's just an old, but the woman turned to one of the servers nearby. Do we have a jacket or something more appropriate? That was it. Mark set the cheesecake down. He crossed the room with even steps, arriving just as the server returned with a clean towel. Mark reached out, gently, taking the towel and handing it to Maya. Here, he said softly. Take your time. The coral-blazered woman blinked. Mr. Beckett, I didn't mean to. I know what you meant, Mark replied, his voice still calm. You meant to correct an image that offended your comfort. She bristled. That's not fair. It's fairer than what she got at the front door, he said, eyes unwavering. Silence rippled around them. I was under the impression, he continued, that this was a celebration for a child, not a fashion review. A few nearby guests tried to look casual as they turned away. The woman gave a stiff nod and retreated. Maya looked up at him. I was fine, she whispered. I know, he replied, but I wasn't. She cleaned her sleeve slowly, blotting the chocolate with the towel, her motions careful and focused. When she finished, she handed the towel back. Thank you. He looked at her for a long moment. You ever think about what kind of place you want to build when you grow up? I don't know, she said. Honestly, something where nobody gets asked to leave before they're even allowed to speak. Mark smiled. Good place, he said. I'd visit. Later, when the party began to wind down, and the children drifted toward their parents or guardians, Madison gave Maya a long hug. Thank you for coming, she said. You made it better. Maya looked down at her scuffed shoes and whispered, You made me feel seen. As Mark and Maya stepped back into the hallway and out into the cooling night air, she asked softly, Can I ask one last thing? Of course. Why were you there that day when I was on the bench? Mark thought for a moment. Sometimes, he said, the world puts you in the right place. The real question is, do you stop long enough to notice? She thought about that. Then she nodded. They walked in silence for a while past the stone columns and parking ballots and the hum of departing cars. When they reached the corner, Mark paused. I'll have someone drive you home, he said. But I hope next time we meet somewhere else, somewhere not behind a velvet rope. Maya turned to him. I hope next time I don't need someone to walk me through the door. Mark grinned. Then I'll just be the one holding it open. And with that she stepped into the waiting car, as the girl turned away at the door. But as the one who'd come back and been seen fully and fiercely, and for the first time all night, the weight in her chest began to lift. Not because everything had changed, but because she had. The ride home was quiet, save for the hum of the car and the soft jazz playing from the dashboard. Maya sat in the back seat of the sleek black sedan. The same gift box she had brought now resting open on her lap. Madison had returned the music box to her after the party ended, saying, "Keep it. I want you to have it so you remember how brave you were today." Now the little ballerina spun slowly under the dim cabin light. The melody, faint and imperfect from the tiny crank, drifted through the space. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." Maya leaned her head against the window, watching the city blur by in streaks of golden gray. She wasn't sure what she felt. Lighter, maybe, but tired in a way she hadn't known before. When the car pulled up outside her building, a low-rise complex with peeling paint and a flickering security light, the driver got out to open her door. She thanked him politely, stepping onto the cracked sidewalk. Before he left, he handed her a folded envelope. "From Mr. Beckett," he said simply, then nodded and drove away. Maya stood under the street lamp, envelope in one hand, the music box in the other. She didn't open it. Not yet. She climbed the steps to the second floor, avoiding the one that always groaned, and quietly let herself into the apartment. The living room light was off, but the kitchen glowed faintly. Her mother was at the table, nursing a chipped mug of tea, still in her janitor's uniform. She looked up immediately when she saw Maya. "There you are," she said, setting the mug down. "You're late." Maya stepped in, trying not to let the emotions flood out all at once. "I was at Madison's party. It ran long." Her mother stood and walked over, brushing a hand across Maya's cheek, then pausing when she saw the faint chocolate stain on her sleeve. "What happened?" Maya shook her head. "Nothing bad, just a long night." Her mother gave her a look, the kind that said she knew there was more, but she wouldn't push. Instead, she motioned to the table. "You hungry?" "May not." There were 2 grilled cheese sandwiches on mismatched plates. Maya sat down and picked at the crust. After a moment, she placed the envelope on the table and slid it over. "He gave me this, Mr. Beckett." Her mother raised an eyebrow, but said nothing as she opened it. Inside was a handwritten note and a check. Her eyes scanned the paper and then she froze. "Maya," she breathed. Maya's fork stopped midair. "What? This check?" Her mother said, voice trembling. "It's for your tuition. Not just this year. All of it. High school. Even a note for a college starter fund." Maya blinked. He didn't say anything. Her mother looked at the note again, then read aloud quietly. "To Maya Rivers. So your door is never closed for lack of money. The world needs more voices like yours. Keep walking through, Mark Beckett." For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Maya whispered, "Why would he do that?" Her mother's eyes shone. "Because he sees something in you. Same thing I've seen since you were a baby. Crying with your fist in the air like you were already fighting." Maya smiled, but it wavered. "At the party, they didn't want me there." "Not really. Only Madison, the rest." She hesitated. "They looked at me like I didn't fit." Her mother nodded slowly, as if she knew exactly what that felt like. "You don't need to fit," she said. "You just need to stand." They ate in silence for a while. The grilled cheese was a little cold by now, but neither of them cared. Later that night, after brushing her teeth and changing into her pajamas, Maya sat on her bed and opened the music box again. She let the melody play softly in the dark as she stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment, the bench, the door, the lights, the whispers. Her heart still ached a little, but it beat with more strength now, more defiance. Before she turned off the lamp, she pulled out her school notebook and began to write. It wasn't a story. Not yet. It was just a list. Places I will walk into someday. 1. A real bookstore where I'll read my name on the shelf. 2. A university lecture hall where I'll ask the questions no one wants to. 3. A courtroom where I'll stand for someone who doesn't have anyone. 4. A dinner table where everyone looks like me and no one has to explain why they belong. 5. Any door, every door, she paused, then added. 6. The world. She smiled and closed the notebook. Then, as she turned out the light, she whispered into the night, I'm not poor. I'm just starting, and the music box, barely audible now, seemed to agree. The next morning brought no trumpets, no grand announcements, just the soft clink of a spoon in a teacup, and the distant hum of city buses rolling through their routes. Maya sat at the kitchen table, legs swinging from the chair, a slice of toast untouched on her plate. Her mind wasn't in the room. It was still back at the garden terrace, back in that room full of chandelier light and careful smiles. Her mother sat across from her, hair pulled into a bun, eyes scanning the local paper. She wasn't reading. Not really. She was watching Maya in the way mothers do, quietly, fully, without needing words. Sleep okay? She asked. Maya nodded. Weird dreams. I was back there, but this time they made me take a quiz to prove I belonged. Her mother didn't laugh. Did you pass? I think I wrote an essay instead. This time, her mother smiled. At school, word had started to travel. Not loudly, not in the cafeteria shouts or hallway chatter, but in whispers. Peyton's voice was the first. Did you hear that girl Maya? She came with a billionaire to Madison's party. Others chimed in, half curious, half cautious. I saw them talking near the chocolate fountain, one boy said. He gave her a ride, added another. When Maya walked into homeroom, heads turned, then quickly looked away. Her teacher, Miss Camden, greeted her with a warm smile that lingered a second too long, like someone who wasn't sure how to act now that they might be in the presence of someone important. Maya took her seat by the window, unzipped her backpack, and tried to pretend everything was normal, but it wasn't. At lunch, Madison joined her at the corner table, bringing 2 cartons of milk and a pack of cookies. I think you broke the school, she said cheerfully. Everyone's acting like you're royalty now. Maya groaned. I don't want that. I know, Madison said. Serious now? But they saw you, really saw you, and it scared them a little. Maya looked up. Why would it scare them? Because you didn't get in through the usual way and you didn't beg to stay. You just belonged. That shakes people for a moment. Neither of them spoke. Then Madison added, I'm glad you didn't leave. You showed them how small their world was. That night, back in her room, Maya opened her notebook again. The list was still there, untouched since the night before. But today, she didn't add to it. Instead, she turned the page and wrote, things I know now. 1. Being seen is not the same as being accepted. 2. Money can open doors, but dignity is what keeps them open. 3. Some people only respect you if someone richer does first. 4. That's their problem. 5. I don't need to be quiet to be kind. 6. I don't need to fit to be real. 7. The truth makes people uncomfortable, and that's okay. She set the pen down, breathing a little easier. The next weekend, an envelope arrived by mail. It wasn't thick or fancy, just a plain white envelope with Maya's name written in ink that slanted slightly to the left. Inside was a letter on fine stationery. Dear Maya, I hope this finds you well. I wanted to thank you for walking through that door. You reminded me what courage looks like. I'm hosting a small gathering next month. Not a party, not a gala, just a room of people who believe in building better futures. I'd like you to be there to speak if you're willing. There will be no dress code, no list at the door, just voices that matter. Let me know. We'll arrange everything you need. Mark Beckett. Maya read it 3 times before handing it to her mother. Her mother read it once, then sat down slowly. You don't have to do anything you're not ready for, she said carefully. I think I want to, Maya replied. But not for him, for me. For people who felt the same. Later that evening, they sat together on the fire escape, legs dangling, watching the sun sink behind the rooftops. Maya turned to her mother and asked quietly, Did you ever feel like the door was closed on you? Her mother didn't answer right away. Then she said, most of my life, but I learned to make windows. They sat in silence. That beautiful kind of silence that holds space for both sadness and hope. Down below, a siren wailed. Somewhere someone was laughing. Life continued unchanged. But inside Maya, everything had shifted. Not because she had been noticed, but because she'd noticed herself. And for the first time, she didn't feel like a visitor in her own story. She felt like the one writing it. The building was old, but dignified. Tucked into a quiet corner of downtown Atlanta. Not the flashy skyline part, no towering glass, no revolving doors, but brick and ivy. Iron railings and brass handles polished by time. A place with memory in its bones. Maya stood at the bottom of the steps, clutching her notebook against her chest. Above her, a carved wooden plaque read, "The Langston House, Center for Civic Dialogue." This was the place. A black car idled at the curb behind her. Mark Beckett had offered to send a driver again, but Maya politely declined. She and her mother had taken the bus, just 2 transfers and a walk, like always. Her mother waited now, sitting on a nearby bench with a book and a quiet smile that said, "I'm here if you need me." Maya exhaled and climbed the steps. Inside, the air was warm, filled with low voices and the faint smell of fresh coffee. People mingled, some in jeans and sweaters, others in suits, a few in traditional African fabrics that shimmered like oil paint. There was no red carpet, no VIP section, just a long wooden table, a circle of folding chairs, and space enough for stories. Mark spotted her from across the room. He broke away from a small conversation and came over, his steps unhurried, his eyes kind. "You made it," he said. Maya nodded, nerves fluttering. "I almost turned back, but you didn't." She glanced around. "Everyone looks grown up." "So do you," Mark said, "just not in the way the world measures it." He offered her a glass of water. She took it, her fingers trembling only slightly. "Where do I sit?" she asked. "Wherever you like," he said. "There's no head of the table." And that was true. The room had been arranged in a large, imperfect circle. No podium, no stage, just voices waiting their turn. Maya sat near the window. The light from outside streamed through, casting patterns across the wood floor like stained glass. She opened her notebook and stared at the page she had written the night before. "Truth is like water. It finds a way, even through stone." She didn't know yet if it was a poem or a speech, but it felt real. The gathering began. Mark welcomed everyone with a short, simple introduction. "We're here to listen," he said, "and to speak if we're ready. This space isn't about answers. It's about the courage it takes to say something true." People spoke. A retired teacher talked about being silenced at school board meetings. A young man described growing up undocumented, always looking over his shoulder. An older woman with hands like folded maps shared how she'd once been turned away from a voting booth. Then Mark nodded toward Maya. "If you'd like," he said gently. Maya stood slowly. Her voice when it came was soft but steady. "My name is Maya Rivers. I'm 12 years old. I go to Jefferson Middle School. I like science, especially anything that explodes in foam. And last week, someone told me without saying the words that I didn't belong." A hush fell over the room. They didn't say it out loud. They didn't have to. It was in the way they looked at my dress, at my shoes. It was in the door they closed, even though I had an invitation. She paused, her heart thumping. "But someone else saw me. Not because of what I wore or where I came from, just me. And that's why I'm here." She held up her notebook. "This is where I write the things I can't always say. And today, I want to say this. I'm not asking anyone to make space for me. I'm just letting you know I'm already here." The silence afterward wasn't awkward. It was sacred. Mark was the first to nod. Then others joined. One by one, the room responded not with applause, but with something deeper. Respect. Afterward, a woman in a blue scarf approached Maya. "I run a community writing group," she said. Would you ever want to come share that poem or anything else? Maya blinked. You think it's a poem? It's more than that. The woman smiled. It's a door. Later, as the event wound down, Maya found herself standing by the refreshment table. A man in a crisp shirt and tired eyes came over holding a cup of coffee. You know, he said, when I was your age, I couldn't have done what you just did. Maya looked at him. Me neither. Not until last week. He chuckled. Well, keep talking. The world's full of people pretending they can't hear. When she stepped back outside, her mother stood up from the bench and opened her arms without saying a word. Maya hugged her tight. Then she whispered, I didn't just walk into a room today. I built one. Her mother pulled back and looked at her. No, baby, she said. You are the room. They walked down the steps together, the city wide and waiting. And somewhere inside her, Maya knew this was just the beginning, not of being accepted, but of being undeniable. A week after the Langston House gathering, Maya was back to her usual rhythm, school, homework, cleaning her sneakers on the fire escape every Saturday. She hadn't told many people about the meeting. It wasn't that she wanted to hide it. It was just sacred, like something you keep in your pocket, close to the heart. But some things don't stay small. It started with a phone call at dinner. Her mother answered, her voice cautious the way it always was when the number was unknown. She listened for a long minute, eyes flicking toward Maya. Then she handed the phone across the table. It's for you. Maya took the phone slowly. Hello. A woman's voice, warm but formal, filled the line. Maya Rivers, this is Darlene Kessler from the Atlanta Youth Forum. I was at the Langston House event. I heard you speak. Maya froze. Oh, we're organizing a citywide event for young voices, students, activists, creatives. We're partnering with Channel 9 and the Atlanta Historical Society. We'd love for you to be one of our speakers. Maya's mouth went dry. Me? You? Yes. We were moved by what you shared, and we think others should hear it. When would it be? Maya asked finally. 3 weeks from now, the Civic Auditorium downtown will take care of transport, security, and anything you need. But more than anything, Maya, we just want your voice. That night, long after the dishes were done and the lights turned out, Maya lay in bed with her notebook open beside her. The moonlight spilled across the pages. She had written, then scratched out, then written again. What do you say when they finally hand you the microphone? Her heart said, tell the truth. But her fear said, what if it's not enough? The next morning, she told Madison. They were sitting on the swings at recess. You're going to be amazing, Madison said without hesitation. You're going to make grown-ups cry. Maya smiled. But then her face turned serious. What if I mess up? Then you mess up, Madison shrugged. But they'll still remember you stood up there when most kids wouldn't. That night, her mom pulled out a box from the back of the closet. Inside were old photos, black and white, some cracked at the edges. Her grandfather in a civil rights march. Her uncle in his mechanic uniform holding a homemade sign. Dignity doesn't expire. These are the voices you come from. Her mother said. You're not standing alone up there. You're standing with them. 3 weeks passed in a blur. Maya practiced every day on the balcony in the school library, even whispering lines on the bus. Her speech changed shape each time, like clay in her hands. It wasn't polished, but it was hers. The night of the event, she stood backstage in a crisp blue dress, a small mic clipped to her collar. Her mother held her hand. Mark Beckett stood nearby, nodding in quiet support. You ready? He asked. No, Maya whispered. He smiled. Perfect. That means you care. They called her name. She stepped onto the stage, the lights warm and blinding, the faces in the crowd just a blur. But the room was full. Teachers, parents, students, reporters, and somewhere near the front row, her mother, holding her phone like a torch. Maya took a breath. My name is Maya Rivers. I'm 12 years old. And for a long time, I thought my voice didn't matter. She paused, let the silence breathe. Last month, I stood outside a door I was invited to. And still, they didn't let me in. Not because of who I am, but because of what I look like, what I wore, what I didn't have. A ripple in the audience. But then someone saw me. Not because I was loud, not because I had money, just because I was there. And that reminded me being seen can be powerful. But seeing others, that's where the real power begins. She looked out over the crowd, finding her mother's eyes. I don't want to be the only kid like me in the room. I want there to be 100 more. I want us to build places where no one asks to prove they belong. Where doors are made of listening, not locks. The applause started slow, then swelled. Not just polite claps, but real rising sound. A roar made of hope. Backstage, Mark stood with his arms crossed, eyes shining. When she returned behind the curtain, Maya didn't say anything. She just leaned into her mother's arms and let the hug wrap around all the fear, all the fire. Later that night, as the city slept, Maya opened her notebook again. She wrote, when they say speak only when spoken to, remember your story is the question they've been afraid to answer. In the months that followed, offers came not for fame, but for collaboration, youth councils, writing workshops, letters from other schools asking, how do we start an echo room? Maya said yes to the ones that felt real, the ones that weren't just boxes to check or photo ops to grab. She said yes when she saw they were listening. Her life didn't become perfect. She still got nervous before talking in public. She still missed her old quiet sometimes, but now her quiet had shape, purpose. Echo. One evening on the anniversary of the night outside the garden terrace, Maya and her mother returned to the same block. The restaurant had new signage now. Same valet. Maya stood across the street, watching the glow from the windows. I'm not going in, she said. Not this time. Her mother looked at her gently. Why not? Maya shrugged. Because I don't need to. I've already built better places. And somewhere far away, in another city or school or bus stop, another young girl, maybe holding a notebook, would whisper something into the wind just loud enough to be heard, because Maya Rivers had walked through the first door and left the rest open behind her. The story of Maya Rivers teaches us that true courage isn't about shouting the loudest. It's about speaking the truth when it's hardest. It reminds us that the smallest voices often carry the deepest wisdom. And that real change begins not in grand speeches, but in quiet moments of honesty. Maya's journey shows that dignity isn't given, it's claimed. And when we listen to those who've been ignored, we don't just hear their pain, we find our shared humanity, BUP stories.